Hi, Alameda County Progressive Dems. It's such an honor to join you guys. I'm so sorry that I'm not there live with you all right now. I actually just got to the East Coast tonight really, from California. So I am a little jet lagged and tired, but it's really exciting to be in touch with you guys, and hopefully, one day I'd love to be able to come join an event in person. I grew up in Southern California, but my parents live in the Bay now, and I went to school up at Cal. So have spent a lot of time in the Bay Area. It's very close to my heart. Have a lot of good friends and family there. And I was in Sacramento almost 2 weeks ago now, on the 10th, when the emergency hearing was called for AB 715. Which, for those of you who are not familiar, AB 715 is a very dangerous assembly bill that has now made it all the way to Gavin Newsom's desk, and he will likely sign it sometime next week. I still think that it's possible for us to stop that, and so I'm going to talk about a few ways that I think we can do that. But this bill is particularly dangerous because it is essentially a censorship bill for what can and can't be taught or even discussed in California public schools when it comes to criticism of Israel and a lack of a distinction between that and anti-Semitism. And there's a lot of reasons why I oppose this bill, and took time and energy and got involved was asked to join this coalition of people working against it, and wrote an op-ed about it. But one of the main ones is that the California Teachers Association and a ton of other educators and unions across the state are in opposition. And so when I look at the coalition, right, to me, it's very concerning as a Jewish person, as a Jewish Californian, and as someone who honestly experienced anti-Semitism in California public schools when I was growing up, obviously long before October 7th. But I have that experience. I know how scary and dangerous anti-Semitism is. And I also know how easy it is to weaponize that. And I see that happening for these students who I really feel for. It's terrifying to, have a swastika placed on your back. But creating a special kind of coordinator who is a political appointment, basically, to determine what is anti-Semitism and what constitutes as that, is really dangerous. And it sets a precedent for clamping down on speech that is considered politically unacceptable. I really, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, do not believe that AB 715 will stop anti-Semitism or stop students from experiencing anti-Semitism in California public schools. If anything, I think it will make it worse. And one of the reasons for that is that, again, I look at the coalition of people supporting and not, and to see a lot of the mainstream Jewish community. Of course, there are lots of Jews who are part of the coalition of people opposing it, myself included, and a ton of the other folks that were in Sacramento with me. But to see a really broad, diverse group of people that represent so much of our party and our base, and just the electorate overall, but teachers, unions, educators, indivisible groups, tons of different academics from across the spectrum of academia, all standing up against this bill. I want to be with those people, right? And I deeply believe that the Jewish community needs to be in alliance with those people, not in alliance with AIPAC and not in alliance with JPAC, which is a California Jewish lobby and advocacy group. And what I'll say is that when I was in Sacramento, I could tell that the senators, who we were in the hearing room with, were most uncomfortable when someone from California Teachers Association or another union, SEIU, ACLU was also there opposing it. When those folks were talking and were expressing their opposition, the legislators were very nervous because it's easy for them to write off the Arab and Muslim community or even Jews like myself because they've put us in, a category of Jews who are critical of Israel. And they don't necessarily see that as valid, I think, unfortunately, as Jews who are more supportive of the state of Israel right now. But to me, it was very telling that these Democratic legislators were particularly anxious, seeing that they were going to vote on the other side of the entire California Teachers Association, the ACLU, and a ton of other organizations that represent their constituencies. Because this is a bill that's very similar to bills that have passed in Texas and Florida that have resulted in book bans and other censorship and limitation of what can be taught in public schools and punishing of teachers and even students who bring certain topics up that the state deems undesirable. And so it makes no sense to me that California Democrats, and especially that Gavin Newsom, who is positioning himself to run against Republicans, would sign a bill that gives AIPAC a win, right? And that also goes against what, at this point, 93% of Democrats are not supportive of Israel's military actions in Gaza and Israel's war crimes, and would are not supportive of the U.S. sending full military aid to Israel. So it's really essential for all of us in these next few days to contact the governor's office, to amplify any efforts to oppose this bill, and to also explain it in the context of, that this is not about stopping anti-Semitism. If anything, it weaponizes anti-Semitism to crack down on free speech. And that is so dangerous. If anything, that is more dangerous for Jews. I really want people to know that by supporting this bill, they are actually doing more harm to the Jewish community and to the Jewish people in their life that they care about. Because the only real safety for any of us is solidarity and multiracial democracy and freedom of speech and, freedom to teach and discuss anything, right? That is what makes our country so special and so great. And we're seeing over these last few weeks, especially, such a terrifying crackdown on free speech. So I don't understand why the governor would pass legislation that gives a win to Trump and the right wing, and sets a very dangerous precedent for further repression and censorship of what is taught and discussed in schools. I hope you all are trying to take care of yourself in these really scary times, and stay organizing. But by joining this call, it's clear that you are. So it makes me really happy to know that. And I'll pass it off back to the coordinators. But I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday night and take care.